sing it out and say, I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm, and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar up from the ashes, and hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is alive. Oh, come on, let's sing it out. Sing, I raise a hallelujah. I raise a hallelujah. Sing with everything inside me. Oh, yes, I raise a hallelujah. And I will watch the darkness flee. Yes, I raise a hallelujah. In the middle of the mystery. Oh, sing, I raise a hallelujah. Come on, I love this line. Sing, fear you lost your hold on me. Oh, I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. We say louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar up from the ashes, and hope will arise. 'Cause death is defeated, the King is alive. Hands up, hey! He's alive, he's alive. Come on, sing a little louder, sing a little louder, and sing a little louder, sing a little louder, sing a little louder, sing a little louder. Oh, sing a little louder, sing a little louder. Come on, let's sing it out, say it. Oh, sing a little louder. In the presence of my enemies. Sing a little louder. Louder than the unbelief. And sing a little louder. My weapon is a melody. We say, sing a little louder. Heaven comes. Sing a little louder. Louder than the unbelief. Sing a little louder. My weapon is a melody. Sing a little louder. Heaven comes to fight for me. We say, sing a little louder. I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. We say louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Oh, say up from the ashes, and hope will arise. 'Cause death is defeated, oh, the King is alive. We say I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar up from the ashes, and hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is alive. Sing, I raise a hallelujah. Yes, I raise it. Yes, we raise a hallelujah. Lift it up and say, I raise a hallelujah. Come on, across the room, release a shout of praise. Jesus. So God, we thank you for your presence and your love. God, we know that in your presence there's peace and joy. Come on, all across the room with hands lifted and eyes closed. Just begin to just think about the goodness of the Father, his love and his joy. It's never ending, it's overflowing. Sweet love, God, it's nothing compares to your love, Jesus. to the secret place, just an altar and a flame. 'Cause love is found here in our sacred space. I hear your voice, I see your face. Come on, let's sing it out and say, 'cause you're still my first love, and you're still my only one. You're still my first love, and you're still my only one. There's nothing compares to God. And there's a table just for you and me. Break the bread and pour the wine. In perfect union, there's nothing in between. I am yours and you are mine. Come on, sing it out. Sing, you're still my first love. Yes, you are. You're still my only one. Yeah. You're still my first love. Oh, you're still my only one. Nothing compares, God. There's nothing compares, God. Come on, sing out. Let's go simple and says, and I feel my heart beating out of my chest. I wanna stay forever like this. And may the flame of my heart, it always be lit. 'Cause I wanna burn forever like this. And I feel my heart beating out of my chest.
it's so good to have you here. We're going to have a great day today. I am confident of that, and I'm so glad you're here. I want you to keep your heart open throughout this entire service. Hey, you can go ahead in just a moment and be seated, but, I don't, a lot of people aren't shaking hands or whatever right now, but maybe you want to give somebody a high five or if you're like, I'm not doing anything, at least wave at them. You may not want to jump up and do a chest bump like you saw on football yesterday. I don't recommend that necessarily, but at least wave. Let people know you're glad to see them as well. I'm glad to see you, and you may be seated. Well, thank you, everybody, for being with us, and it's good to have you here. We're starting a brand new message series today that I'm incredibly fired up about it. And I just said to one of my best friends a few moments ago, I got way more sleep last night than I normally do. So my energy level is even higher than it usually is. And but I'll let you out on time, I promise. That's what you're worried about. Well, he's got a lot of energy, so he's got to keep. I'm not going to do that. But I'm so glad that you are here. And it's always great seeing our church family, and it's great seeing our new friends. I know that we've got new friends here with us this morning. Thank you for being with us. And I want you to just sit back. If you're a guest, relax, enjoy the rest of the service. And we're just thrilled that you are here. And we hope that you'll come back and be with us again and again. And if you are new, like brand new, this is your first Sunday here, or you're fairly new and I've never had a chance to meet you yet, please stop by that big blue tent out front. We call it Guest Central, right after the service. I would love to meet you personally, introduce myself to you, find out who you are. And if you're brand new, please let our team know they've got a gift that they would like to give to you. Thank you for continuing to be faithful. Thank you for honoring God and giving back to God what is rightfully His. And it's an act of worship and devotion. Anybody ever spent money on stupid stuff before? Have you done that at least 150 times? Yeah. But when you and I invest in eternity, we never regret that. I've never invested a dollar. I never regretted investing a dollar in eternal matters or in missions or kingdom causes that we get the privilege to be a part of in our family every single month. So I want to just say thank you, whether you text to give or give online or give in the bucket at the end of the service. Thank you for being faithful. And thank you for your generosity when we have special projects. And I want to encourage every one of you to participate with us again this year. Samaritan's Purse, Operation Christmas Child. The reason I want to mention this right now is because I didn't see the video announcements this week, which is not ordinary, but so I don't know if it's in there or not, but I want to encourage you. Samaritan's Purse is a great organization. Those of you that know the name Billy Graham, then you know of his son Franklin Graham, who heads up Samaritan's Purse, and every year, and you're like, well, why are we starting it this early? And I'm just telling you, if Walmart and Sam's Club has to start early, how many of you know we do too? And so because these are international kids that we're going to be blessing, so we want to do that. So I hope you'll get a box and sign up to do that after the service out in the information area. Thank you for doing that. And without anything else, turn your attention toward the screen, and we'll dismiss our middle schoolers.
Good morning and welcome to Victory Church. If you're new, we'd like to keep you updated on what's happening and help you and your family discover all that's available for you here. Please take a moment and head to victorylakeland.org/connectcard. Or if you prefer, you can stop by the Guest Central tent as you leave so we can meet you and give you a small gift as a way of saying thank you for being here today. For seniors who love a great meal and a good laugh, the Adult Plus team invites you to Cafe Murder, an interactive murder mystery dinner theater experience happening Friday, October 29th from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. in the Family Life Center. The $10 entry fee includes a full buffet dinner, and you can purchase your ticket at the Adult Plus table in the lobby or at the chapel service on Friday morning. And that Sunday, October 31st, we have a fun way to make memories with family and friends at Victory's Fall Festival, our Halloween alternative. For only $2 each, you and your kids will enjoy festival games, inflatables, a hayride, live music, a car smash, a rock climbing wall, a trunk or treat experience, and more. Delicious food, drinks, and desserts will also be available for a small fee. Purchase your entry wristbands in the lobby as you leave today and go ahead and pick up a few extras to give away. Finally, this is the time of year we help kids around the world hear about Jesus and have an exciting Christmas through Operation Christmas Child. Take a look.
The joy of seeing a child open the boxes for the first time is it's incredible.
We are so excited. Many of the children receive shoeboxes for the first time in their life.
We pray that these boxes will be used to bring a lot of happiness and joy, but more importantly, the gospel to each heart, all these little children around the world.
No greater need and no greater time than right now for us to go out and serve boldly.
Oh my goodness!
This is what these shoe boxes are all about, to go out and to bring a hope of Jesus Christ around the world.
I'm just so amazed at what God does each and every year. This is an opportunity to impact the lives of millions of children, just like you've seen. But we need more boxes for next year. Every box is an opportunity for us to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. So thank you, and God bless each and every one.
Through your generosity, Samaritan's Purse reaches millions of children in some of the most remote areas of the world with gifts and the message of the gospel. And Victory Church is excited to be a part of this incredible program. Last year, you filled and donated 543 shoe boxes. And this year, we know that together we can bless even more children. And if you've never given a box, don't worry. The process is easy and fun. Simply pick up a box as you leave today, follow the included instructions on which gifts to purchase and pack inside, and return your unwrapped box to Victory, along with a $9 donation to cover the cost of shipping. If you prefer, you can prepare and send a box online for just $25. Visit victorylakeland.org/news for more information.
Well, it was in the video announcements, wasn't it? I don't know how much you know about Samaritan's Purse, but it is a great, great, great organization. And I've already got my box, and I hope that you will when you leave here today. I'm really fired up about this series, and I just want to say right out of the gate, as we're talking about family life, I want to encourage you to be here every single week. I mean, if you're out of town, all right, I can't do anything about that, obviously. If you're out of town, then be sure to watch online. But I want to encourage you to be here next week and the week after that. And I know that when we're talking about family, some of you may be, just based on where you're at this stage in your life. You may be single, or you would be married, or you might have gone through a divorce, or you might have lost your spouse, or, just a myriad of circumstances. Maybe that you don't have kids. And so you're like, why should I be a part of a family series? And the reason why is most of you are probably going to need what we're talking about like right now in your life. Others of you, you may not need it right now, but you very well may need it in the future. And even if you don't need it in the future, here's what I want to encourage you to do. I want to encourage you to take really, really good notes, because you can help a family member, or you can help a friend. And I'm going to give you a lot of, I think, helpful, relevant, pragmatic information straight out of the Bible. And again, I'm just glad that you are here for this series as we talk about no ordinary family. Now, I know this, that at the mention of the word family, it can create all kinds of reactions to that. For some of you, the very mentioning, when I mention the word family, for some of you, immediately, you can't help it. It's not like you intentionally do this, but your mind would drift. If it bent one direction, it would bend toward negativity. Whatever your history or past would be, when you think about family, it's not like something really positive for you. For some it is. For some it's negative, for some it's positive. For some, when you think about the word family, it represents pain. For others of you, it's joy. For some of you, when you hear the word family, it creates within you this sense of frustration. For others of you, great satisfaction. For some of you, when you hear family, it causes you to feel very hopeful. For others of you, it just accentuates the fact that sometimes when you think in regards to family, you would have a sense of despair. And so we're going to help you during this series. I'm excited about the next 3 weeks of being every week to be able to communicate with you. And let me go ahead and tip my hand and tell you that for certain you're going to want to be here next week. And the reason why, I'm going to take you, and I've already got a lot of hours invested in the talk for next week. And I'm not going to tell you who it is. You've got to be here for it. But I'm going to show you the very worst marriage, I think, mentioned in the Bible. And for some of you, your motivation could be here because maybe you're in a season, you're in one of those painful seasons of your marriage. You're going to want to be here because you're going to be encouraged to know how bad this marriage actually was. And you're going to say, well, hey, my situation is not nearly as bad as I thought it was. I think it's the worst marriage that's found in the Bible, but from it, we're going to extract some valuable lessons. And I hope you'll be here for that. Now, what I do as a pastor, I've been doing for quite some time now. And I've made some observations over the years. And before we get into our text and our story, the event that plays out in the scriptures today, I want to just quickly share with you like 3 real quick observations as a pastor that I've had working with all kinds of families. Observation number 1, and you see the title of this series, No Ordinary Family. Here's my observation. There are really no ordinary families. There just aren't. How many of you'd be willing to admit that there's just a little bit, all right? There's just a little bit of dysfunction in your family some way, somehow, huh? How many of you know? So, how many of you know sometimes you gotta put a little fun in the dysfunction because it's there and you can't do a thing about it, all right? That's been my observation. There's just no ordinary families. Every family that I know of has at least a little bit of dysfunction in it, has been my observation. Observation number 2, there have been no perfect families that I've seen. And you know how that is? Because how can you take imperfect people and bring them all together and there be a perfect family or perfect relationships or a perfect marriage? I've not seen a perfect family. I've not seen a perfect marriage. And the reason why is there's no perfect people involved. You take imperfect people and you put them together, and it's just sometimes there's the high times, sometimes there's the low times. And for some of you that are here today, this may be one of the most important things that you'll hear in this series, and that is if you happen to right now and you've got some problems, if you're having right now some problems in your marriage, it doesn't necessarily mean that you've got a bad marriage. It just means that there's imperfect people trying to work through the nuances of it. If you're like, well, you know, I've got problems in my family, doesn't mean you've got a bad family. It just means there's some imperfect people that are part of the process, and that becomes an opportunity and a challenge for God to be able to work with. So that's my second observation. There's no ordinary families. Number 2, there's no perfect families. Number 3, here's another observation. In most every case, and I know that there are exceptions, and I've worked with people on some of these exceptions, but in the vast majority of circumstances, families can get better. Marriages can get better. And I know that there is exceptions to that, and I've seen it where, you know, somebody just was totally uncooperative. They were not going to do anything, add anything. They weren't going to change nothing. They were unwilling to make any kind of investment or adjustment whatsoever. And that becomes, in a family structure, that becomes very, very difficult. So not everyone, and I have to admit that, but in the vast majority of families can get better. So I want to talk about marriage today and next week, and then we'll wrap it up 2 weeks from today. A focal point that week, we'll be talking about parenting, raising kids. And I'll look forward to that one as well. We've got 3 kids, and they're grown. And this is what I tell people all the time. We don't have perfect kids because they've got very imperfect parents. But one of the things I'm really, 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 really glad of is my kids, having grown up in a pastor's home, they still love Jesus and they still love church. And how many of you know that's a big thing? It really is. And we're grateful for that. Now, if you ever come up to me and you were to say, hey, Pastor Jeff, I just don't read the Bible, and here's why I don't, because it's not interesting to me, and it's not, it's like boring to me, then I want to just mention this to you ahead of time. Please don't say that to me, because right away that will disclose to me that you've never really read the Bible. Because the Bible, and I say this not because I read it a lot and study it a lot and preach from it every week, but I'm just telling you, how do I say it? There's some crazy stuff that God has allowed to be documented in His Word. How many of you wave at me if you've ever read the Bible? You're like, you know what? I was thinking about it while I was working on this talk. If God were to say to me, and obviously He didn't, and obviously He shouldn't, but if He were to ever say, Jeff, should I leave this story in? Should I leave this event? Should I talk about? I'd be like, no, God, please don't put that in your Word. Like, no, not that. Don't put that, all of it, but don't put that. How many of you are glad God didn't ask me what belongs in His Word? But He's just allowed some crazy, crazy stuff to be in His Word. And today and next, we're going to see perfect examples of that. So today, a very interesting story. I've really asked God to help me with that. In the lives of Jacob, Rachel, and Leah. And I'm just going to tell you right now, you're going to want to buckle up about now. This is like total weirdness all over this story. Total weirdness all over the story. But from it, there's some valuable stuff that you and I are going to learn. So if you're ready, wave at me so I know you're ready. I'm fired up about it, and it would help me to know that you are as well. So let's get into it. This plays out actually in the very first book of the Bible in Genesis, very specifically Genesis chapter 29, when this very prominent guy, young man from a very prominent family, his name is Jacob, he sees this very gorgeous looking girl, like a really, really, really extraordinarily gorgeous girl, and her name is Rachel. And as soon as, and you'll be able to go back and read it, and I'll just hit a lot of the high points, but as soon as he sees Rachel, in Jacob's mind, this is what his reaction is. He absolutely has to have this girl as his own, no matter what it takes. Now, keep in mind that when we pick up in the story, Jacob does not really know Rachel yet. He does not. He has only seen her, yet his thoughts and his feelings when he sees her are immediately so jacked up that he says to himself, if I could only have Rachel. And you got to see this. You got to understand this fundamentally, even before I take you to the first couple of verses. He is so enamored that Jacob says to himself, if I could have Rachel, then here's what's going to happen. If I had this girl as my own, then my life is finally going to have some meaning. And that's his reaction, and you'll see this play out. If I could have her, he doesn't know her yet, all right? You with me? He's only seen her. But, emotionally, he's at that point where, like, if I had that one, then here's what's going to happen. My life is going to have meaning, and she's going to be, this is what he's thinking. She is going to be the answer to the happiness issue of my life. Or in his case, I'm unhappy, but she is my hope for happiness. By the way, can I just tell you, because I told you this is going to be real pragmatic. We're not only going to look at stories from the Bible in this series, but be real pragmatic. This is so accurate today. This is so, and I could give you all kind of examples, but I got to be sensitive to the time where people, their idea is this: if I just had her, if I just had him, then my life would really have meaning. If I just had him, if I just had her, then I'm finally going to be happy. And it's this idea, and we're going to talk about it in just a moment. Like, if I could just be married to her, if I could just be married to him, then the reality is that would be the answer for what I'm looking for in my life. Now, are you ready for a weird twist in the story, even this early in the story? Are you ready for it? So I mentioned Rachel, right? Rachel's a very attractive gal. Jacob sees her, got to have her as my own. Rachel just happens to be the daughter of Jacob's uncle Laban. Do I need to say that again? Jacob has an uncle. His name is Laban. All right? Laban's daughter is Rachel. How many of you are already a step ahead of me? So this makes Rachel who? His cousin. In digging into this text, most Bible scholars feel like this event played out somewhere in Arkansas. If you're from Arkansas, I apologize. And you know me by now, I'll say just about anything to get a laugh. And obviously it worked. On a side note, you might want to hang on to this thought. And I'm going to give you some background to the text. It appears in Jacob's case, and some of you are going to be able to readily admit to this, and I want you to hang on to this thought, that Jacob never seemed to have the love of his father. See, Jacob had a brother, and it's a whole another story I'm not going to get into. And Jacob had a brother. His brother's name was Esau, and their father, Isaac, Esau was his boy, and Jacob. And so I think that plays into the text. I don't have an opportunity like right here and now to unpack that. But I want you to know this, that Jacob probably never felt the true love of his dad. Furthermore, what complicates this situation is the parent that he was really, really close to, his mother, Rebekah. And in Jacob's life, she was so affectionate. She was so nurturing to Jacob. And you'd have to say that Jacob really was a mama's boy. But he actually, it's a whole other story, so I'll just hit it. You can go back and look at this as well because it precedes what we're talking about from chapter 29. Jacob actually cheats Esau, his older brother, out of his birthright. Esau is so fired up about this that he's going to kill Jacob. And, his mother brings him in and says, son, you got to run. You got to run for your life. And so he takes off. He flees, probably never, according to a lot of scholars on this, he probably never saw his mother again. And when he flees to go with their family in another country. So you've got a guy right here that probably never felt the love of his dad in like a real pronounced way. The one family member that was fully engaged in his life, he's never going to see again. He shows up in a town that he's totally unfamiliar with. This is not where he is from. And he sees Rachel. And perhaps he thinks, if only I could have this girl. Maybe what it will do, much like people feel today. Maybe if I had her, it would cure the pain and the loneliness and the emptiness that's going on inside of me. Things haven't changed a whole lot, have they? It's amazing. It's happened hundreds of years ago, and yet people are people, and emotions are emotions, and feelings are feelings, and thoughts are thoughts. Things haven't changed a whole lot. It's sort of like, the girl, and I see this all the time. You got to keep in mind, I've been doing this quite some time, and I see this oftentimes. A girl who says, you know what, if I don't have a boyfriend or if I don't have a husband, my life is just going to be, so empty. It's just going to be so incomplete. But it's not just girls, it's guys. And guys are like, you know what? If I could just find the one, the right girl, then that might help to wash away the issues that I seem to be struggling with in my life. And I've got a very, very strong suspicion, having spent a lot of time in this story, that that's really where Jacob is like. He's fled to another country, and he's got a circumstance on his hands, and he's going to have to process his way through it. So we pick up the story in verses 16, and I'll read a couple of verses, Genesis 29, 16, and 17, and I'm going to really need your help. You cannot check out on me today. Genesis 29, 16, and 17. Now Laban, who is what? It's his uncle. Now Laban had how many daughters? Two daughters. The name of the older one, keep that in mind, that matters. The older one is Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah had weak eyes. Interesting language, isn't it? She had weak eyes. I'm going for my annual eye appointment tomorrow, and I hope I don't walk away. And they say, well, you've got weak eyes. But you're about to see that Really not talking about her eyes, but that's another story we'll come to. Leah had weak eyes, but Rachel had a lovely figure and was very beautiful. And I want the guys, I didn't mention this to you ahead of time, guys, but I want you to keep those two verses right up here on the screen. Because keep in mind that Jacob, when he sees Rachel, he doesn't really know Rachel. He has seen Rachel. All right? If you're with me on that, you're with me to that point, wave at me. Wave, everybody wave at me if you're with me. All right? So he doesn't know her. He has seen her. And he sees, apparently, Leah too, who is Rachel's older sister. And it says, and a lot of times you can look at this, and if I weren't explaining it to you, not that I'm all this smart, but I've just studied the text, Leah had weak eyes, you'd say, okay, well, here's the situation. She had a vision impairment. Some people think that the Apostle Paul, one of the thorn that he had in his flesh was a vision impairment. But I want to suggest to you, all right? I want to suggest to you that we are not talking about an ophthalmology issue. We're not. And how do we know this? Because it wouldn't contrast. There's no contrast here. You can go back and look at it in your own Bible. If we're talking about vision, all right, you with me? If we're talking about vision, if we're talking about ophthalmology, then it would probably say Leah had weak eyes and Rachel, on the other hand, had 20/20 vision. Are you with me? How many of you know it doesn't say that Rachel has 20/20 vision? What does it say about Rachel? Rachel had a lovely figure and was very beautiful. So, what is the contrast here? And it really plays into the text, so we don't need to skip over it. Let me just state it plainly, all right? I'll just give it to you as plainly as I know how. Rachel is gorgeous, and she has this fantastic body, all right? That's just plainly spoken. Leah, on the other hand, well, let's just say she comes in a very distant second. We're not talking vision. We're not talking ophthalmology here. Let me quickly interject, though, having said that, a thought before we move on. When I make the statement that I'm about to state, I am in no way diminishing physical attraction. I think physical attraction plays into couples coming together in the context of a relationship. And I'm not saying it doesn't matter, because in a sense it does matter. You want to be physically attracted to somebody that you want to spend the rest of your life with. However, and this is a big however, in our oversexed, overly externally driven mindset and culture, it is often treated as the only thing that matters. How many of you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? That's all that matters. Do you think that this is playing out with Jacob? He doesn't know Rachel. He has no clue who Rachel is. He is externally driven. He is externally motivated. And again, that's so like today. So I'm not saying, and please, you need to be clear on this. I'm not saying physical attraction and the mutual context of a relationship doesn't matter. I'm just saying in our culture, we probably put way, way, way more emphasis on that than the inner beauty of a person. How many of you know what I'm talking about? The inner beauty of a person really matters a whole lot. Well, let's transition from this background information now to the takeaways from the circumstances found here in Genesis chapter 29. And I'm going to give you three observations. And again, here is Jacob, and it's not unlike what happens a lot today, where he looked at Rachel, keeping in mind his background, and he's like, I've got to have her. I don't really know her, but I've got to have her. And if I have her, maybe she's the real answer to everything that's wrong in my life. All right? Does that happen today? Happens all the time. So, observations from this. You ready? From this, some takeaways from this story. Number one, I want you to be sure you get good notes. If you don't need this now, you will use it later, perhaps. And if you don't need it for you later, you can use it to help somebody else. If you believe that marriage is the answer, much like Jacob is saying, this is the answer. If you believe that marriage is the answer, you will usually compromise way more than you should. Let me say that again because I don't want you to. If you're like, this is the thing that's going to make me happy. If I'm with this person, that is the answer to all woes in my life. And if I have her, that's going to cure the pain and the loneliness and the emptiness that I feel. If I have him, and that's going to be the. If that's your mantra, if that's your mentality, much like it was for Jacob, then the fact of the matter is, anytime that plays out. And the guys are going to put this up on the screen. Look at it. Since Jacob was in love with Rachel, and I'm like, how's he even in love with her? Because he doesn't really know her. But he's in love. He's all jacked up on his feelings and emotions. And so he went to her father, his uncle. Oh, Lord. I'll work for you for how many years? How many? That matters, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. I'll work for you 7 years if you'll give me Rachel, your younger daughter, as my wife. Now, here's another bizarre detail. Don't ever come to me and say, the Bible's not interesting, it's totally boring. I'll know you haven't read it. Here's another bizarre detail to be considering. In that day, and in that culture, generally speaking, parents would get together and they would choose who was going to be married. It's like, hey, I've got a son and you've got a daughter, and let's just sort of make these obligations to one another, and they're going to grow up. Now, again, we have 3 kids and 2 boys and a girl, and that issue wasn't even interesting to me with the boys, but it was different when Audrey came along. And I'm like, okay, there's something. Maybe we need to reach back to the Old Testament on this and have an arrangement worked out ahead of time. Now, what is also unique about that culture in that day is a man or his family would purchase his bride. And I know that sounds distasteful, but we've got to deal with the culture as the culture was at that time. In that culture, a man or his family would purchase a bride. Are you ready for this? With either money, or with livestock, or with work. All right? I want you ladies to think about this. And again, I remember something in the story of Samson. So I went back while I was working on this and went back into the Judges around chapter 17, I believe. And Samson shows up, and he's got a gift for a girl that he's really interested in. And he's got like this really incredible gift. He's feeling really good about it. Do you know what he's going to present to her? A young goat. How do you girls feel about that? How do you feel if a young man shows up, I'd like to take you out on a date, here's a young goat, I want to just give this goat to you. And so a man or his family, there would be a bride price, all right? A bride price or a dowry that would be paid, and it would either be money, it would be livestock, or it would be work. So see if you can pick up on any sense of desperation on the part of Jacob. He offers how many years of work to have Rachel as his wife? How many? Do you know how many times more this was than normal? You know what was normal? What was normal? He offers what is about, in that culture, about 4 times that which was even necessary. He's compromising. He's all jacked up in his emotions and feelings, like, I do whatever, I gotta have her. And again, this is gonna be the girl that, all this pain, all this junk going on, all my background, if I just have her. And he's like, I worked 7 years for her, 4 times the usual amount. Now, what might be some of the compromises today that happens? And again, I could give you a litany, but let me show you an example. A girl says, I know that sex is a really, really good thing, and I'm looking forward to it, but I really want to save it for marriage. I really want it to be on that special day when I get married, but he's just so insistent. I feel this way in my heart. I want to wait. I know that sex is going to be good, and I want to wait, and everything internally tells me I need to wait, but he just keeps ratcheting up the pressure. So what does she do? She compromises. And she says, well, if I will give him my body, then maybe he'll give me his heart. And it's a compromise. If I don't really want to, not that I'm not interested, but I want to save this. But if I give him my body, because he's so, stinking insistent about it, if I give him my body, maybe he'll give me his heart. And she compromises. It's not what she really wanted to do, but she just feels like, I've got to do it, or maybe I'll lose him. Well, a guy says, well, you know what? I know that, we're not really spiritually compatible. I know that she's not like a solid Christian, but she's just so hot. And, we can work on the spiritual stuff later. And we're not at the same place. Faith, we're on two totally different pages. And but I can work on that. Man, if I could just make her mine, then here's the reality. We can work on the spiritual connectivity sometime later. And what does he do? He compromises. Or he says, well, you know what I got to do? If I'm going to hang on to a great girl like this, I've got to lavish her with some gifts. So he goes against, what he really would want to do, and he just keeps getting deeper, deeper, deeper into debt to buy stuff that he thinks will make her happy and make her stay. If you believe that marriage is the answer, you will usually compromise way more than you should. Secondly, be sure you get this. If you believe that marriage is your answer, you will most likely become very demanding. And I want you to see this. This is what happens with Jacob. And I think whatever was going on the screen is going to be, yep, here we are. Then Jacob said to Laban, look at the language, give me my wife. My time is completed, and I want to make love to her. And he becomes very, very demanding. And I want to just say, if you've ever read this passage before, it's very possible that when you've read it, or maybe you've heard it, this verse, you thought, maybe there's just no big deal going on here. But I want to suggest to you to take a second glance, because it's a much bigger deal than what you have probably formerly thought. You might notice that Jacob's is very demanding. Guys, put it back up on the screen again, if you would. He's like, you know what? Give me my wife. My time is complete. And again, you go back and you look at it a second glance. Jacob is not only being very demanding, can I just tell you, he's being very dishonoring to Rachel, primarily, but also to her father. Cover the ears of your children if you must. But Jacob is essentially saying, I did my part, send her over here to me so that she can do her part. And he becomes very demanding. And this often happens in lots of marriages today across many different areas. Demands and conditions and expectations of almost perfection that no person can ever live up to. And I want to suggest to you that it's a good thing. It is a healthy and helpful thing to communicate with each other in the context of a marriage what your needs are. But I would also say on the other side of that, be realistic, be rational, because your spouse, no matter how great your spouse may be, cannot meet every single need that you have in your life. And a lot of people say, just like Jacob, if I have her, every need in my life is going to be met. And nobody can do that. Your spouse, as much as your spouse loves you, can't do that. You can't do that. Maybe as much as you love your spouse, you can't meet. It's utterly impossible. So communicate your needs. That's good. But be realistic and rational. Because nobody's perfect, including you. But if you think that way, you'll become very demanding. If you think that way, you'll make compromises. And thirdly and lastly, in due time, you will become highly dissatisfied. And perhaps the most outlandish twist of the whole story, I want you to think about what happens next. Don't you ever tell me the Bible's not interesting. And I would have said, God, leave this whole story out. Leave it out. Leave it out. Uncle Laban, good old Uncle Laban, he's got a problem on his hands. In that culture, there's no way the younger daughter can get married first. You with me? Wave your hand at me again if you're with me. Nope, no way. We got to marry off the older daughter first and then the younger daughter. Now, let me tell you what a lot of scholars they've talked about this. In that day, there'd be like a 7-day, in most cases, like this 7-day celebration that would go on, centered around the wedding. And so Laban has this problem on his hand in that Jacob is interested in Rachel, but Rachel, she's the younger daughter, not the older daughter. What am I going to do about this? I've got Leah here, and, but he has no interest the interest is here. And so a lot of scholars believe what happens over this time of probably a 7-day celebration that the, let's just say the alcohol is probably flowing quite frequently. And I don't want to goof up your theology, but I want to suggest to you, all right, I don't know, I wasn't there, but I want to suggest to you there is high probability that Jacob is toasted. There is. And you're like, where did you get that from? You just make that up? You have pizza for dinner last night? No, it wasn't my splurge night. I want to show you why. You want to know? You want to know? All right, look up here on the screen. Here we go. But that night, on the wedding night, when it was dark, Laban took, not Rachel. You notice this nuance? No, not Rachel. Everybody say weird. This is weird. Laban took Leah to Jacob and he slept with her. Now listen, I suggest to you that he was toasted because I'm just saying, I think I would have known the difference. Are you with me? I think I would have known this. I think it would have been clear to me. Hey, you are not Rachel. Who are you? You're not Rachel, but he doesn't know. I think he's toasted. Look at the A part of verse 25, by the way. Here's what happens after the fact. Look at this next verse. It's coming up on the screen. But when Jacob woke up in the morning, it was Leah. And he says, what has happened? Now, there's a lot of stuff that's going on. And again, I studied this text quite thoroughly, and scholars are like, hey, was Laban conspiring not just with Leah, but with Rachel too? Was Rachel a part of the conversation? I mean, how did it play out? Scriptures doesn't say, so therefore we have to be silent about it. We just don't know. But I'm telling you, whole situation was so jacked up. But it all started with a guy who said, you know what? This is going to be the answer. And nobody can be the answer to all the challenges. Now, I want you to think about something. You know what is absent in this story? Did you notice what is not in the story? What is not or not anywhere in the story? Do you notice God is not mentioned in the story? Do you notice that prayer is not mentioned in the story? Do you notice that Jacob was never about a spiritual connection? It was never about, did we see anywhere in the text? And you go and read it. You don't take my word for it. You go and read it. Do you see anywhere in the text where Jacob just says, there's just something about Rachel that, man, when I'm around Rachel, it fires me up spiritually. It makes me want to be a better man. And I want to believe that when I'm around Rachel and we pray together and, we get into God's word together, that it just makes her a better person and we're just so spiritually connected. No. God's not in the story. Prayer's not in the story. Faith is not in the story. A spiritual connectivity is not found anywhere today. And I just want to caution you. And I told you this is going to be an interesting series. I promise you don't want to miss next week. You think this is weird? Come for pure weirdness next week. But today's culture transmits this idea. You have to find the one. And there's only one. You got to find the one, Mr. Right or Mrs. Right. And if you find the one, everything in life is now going to be perfect. Well, if that's what you think, you're setting yourself up for a lot of disappointment. I want to suggest to you to just shake yourself out of what is the normalized cultural mindset. And I want you to look at it from a spiritual vantage point. You're like, all right, Jeff, I'm ready. But what does that look like? I want to just suggest to you that if you truly want to be joyful and fulfilled in life, you need to make not a person, but you need to make God your number one and then look for your number two. How many of you are with me? Make God your number one. Make God the priority of your life. I love this verse. It's the last verse, and I've got to be done. But I want you to see it. Matthew 6:33 says, more than anything else, put who first? Not Mr. Right, not Mrs. Right. Put God first and do what He wants. Then the other things will be yours as well. If you truly want to be joyful, if you truly want to be fulfilled, don't make a person your number one. Make God your number one. And then, if you're not married, you look and allow your boyfriend or your girlfriend to be your number two. Or if you are married, your spouse becomes number two because God is a priority of your life. And can I tell you this? Listen, this is going to be the most important thing that some of you hear. Can I tell you this? That when two are seeking one, anything is possible. You with me on that? When two are seeking Him, when two are seeking one, anything is possible. I want you to stand with me. I want you to stand with me today. We're going to do a great song to wrap us up, and I don't want you to leave until the end of the song. But I don't know what you're here with today. Maybe you've come into this service, and you've got a broken heart, and you need God to heal your broken heart. I'm telling you, God is able. Do you believe it? To heal your broken heart. If you've got a broken marriage, if you've got a broken family, if you've got a broken body, if you feel like your mind is broken, I feel like I'm just going crazy. There's just so much stress and I just feel like I'm losing. Listen, I'm telling you, God is able. There's nothing He can't do. If you're broken in your finances, I'm telling you, we serve a miracle working God. I want you to hear it from me loud and clear. There's nothing that our God can't do. I was reading in my devotions this week, and I came across a verse that I read 1,000 times, but it just so jumped out at me when it said, the Lord is on His righteous throne. Let all the earth rejoice. Are you with me? The Lord is on His righteous throne. Let the whole world rejoice, because there's nothing that our God cannot do. Make Him first. When you make Him your number one and you make the other person your number two, then you've got a proper balance. And if you're two and you seek one with all your heart, just imagine what God can do. And He's able to do something in your life. I'm going to pray for you right now, and then we're going to sing out this song together, and we'll be done. Father, touch your people today. Thank you, Lord, that you are working on our behalf. I know that there are people here today that have a broken heart, or they've got a broken marriage, or they've got a broken body, or they've got a broken mind, or they're broken and defeated in their spirit, and they're hopeless. They're filled with despair. But help them to be reminded from a crazy, weird story in your word that you are the God that offers hope. You're the God that has the answer. You are the God that works miracles in the areas of our lives where we need miracles. And for that, we give you praise. And everybody said, let's worship Him together.
We worship you, God. Yes, we say, Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Sing, Waymaker, say, Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Sing, Waymaker, say, Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You're my Waymaker, Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Come on, let's sing with faith and say, 'cause even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Come on, say, even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop. Come on, if you believe it, just sing it out, say, even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. stop. Come on, just sing it over yourself and say, 'cause even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop. Waymaker, say, waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. This waymaker, say, waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. 'Cause you're my waymaker, say, waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. One more time we sing waymaker, waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Yes, Jesus. So God, we thank you that we can declare that with faith this morning. God, that even when we don't see it, even when we don't feel it, God, you're still moving and you're still making a way. So God, I pray that we'll continue to walk in that faith throughout the rest of our day, throughout the rest of our week. God, we thank you, we love you. It's in Jesus' name we all said amen and amen. Thank you so much for worshiping with us. We'll see you next week.